All right, welcome to Story Chats at Inspy Romance. I'm Elizabeth Maddrey, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Narelle Atkins.
I'm Valerie Comer.
And joining us tonight is Mandi Blake. And Mandi was born and raised in Alabama, where she lives with her husband and daughter, but her Southern heart loves to travel. That's not so great right now. Reading has been her favorite hobby for as long as she can remember, but writing is her passion. She loves a good happily ever after in her sweet Christian romance books and loves to see her characters' relationships grow closer to God and to each other. So we're glad that you're here with us today, Mandi. We're also, this is our first episode back after our 2-week Christmas break. So hopefully you guys had a fabulous Christmas and New Year's. And we're excited to be back on our weekly schedule. No more big breaks in the offing here for us for a little while. Maybe another one around Easter, probably the way things go. Tonight, since it's January and a new year, we're going to be talking about new beginnings. This is a pretty common theme in CCR, and just real quick, CCR is Contemporary Christian Romance. We're probably not going to define it every podcast episode because at some point we will forget. But CCR, that's our focus here at Story Chats, which you probably have picked up on at this point. So, but it's a common theme, new beginnings, and I love it because it's such good conflict just built in right there when a character has to face some sort of new beginning. So one way to have a new beginning is in your novel is for characters to arrive in a brand new place to start over. And that's sort of where we're focusing our talk on new beginnings tonight. So we're going to just talk about our favorite stories with that sort of I'm in a new spot, fish out of water, new beginning kind of thing. So Narelle, why don't you kick us off with a book that you have chosen?
Okay, well, we're going to travel down under and talk about Then There Was You. Can you see that?
Yep.
Then There Was You by Kara Isaac. I really enjoy this story, and it also won the Rita Award as well. So a lot of you have probably heard about Then There Was You, or you've read it before. So in this story, Paige, who's the main character, has this boyfriend she's in Chicago, who's been stringing her along forever and ever. And then some things happen in her life and their relationship ends, and she decides pretty much on a whim to go to Australia and to go to Sydney. And that's where she meets Josh.
Like just go halfway around the world and the relationship ends.
Sure. Well, part of it's because she tells him that's what she's going to do, and he doesn't believe her. So then she's like, now I have to. Sorry, we're cutting you off, Narelle.
No, feel free to jump in. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, and so there she meets Josh, who's an Aussie, and so you can't go wrong with an Aussie hero ever, in my opinion. So, and their romance goes from there, and it's really fun because I think that's a great story with an American who is really a fish out of water in Sydney and Australia, and learning about a new place and driving on the other side of the road and all the fun things that happen when you go down under. Yeah, so that was my first pick because I just thought that was just a fun story, and it's really a new beginning, fish out of water theme story. The second one that I'm going to talk about very quickly is one of my books. That's a novella, His Perfect Catch, and that's meant to be kicking off my series in Sapphire Bay that may get written next century, but I will get around to it. I've got to do some work on getting some other backlist books out and get that series out. And so that's where I've got my main character, Mia, who goes to Sapphire Bay.
Say her first name again, because when I read it, I don't think I pronounced it that way.
Mia.
Okay.
That's how we pronounce Mia, M-I-A.
Okay.
So Mia goes to Sapphire Bay to stay at her cousin's beach house. She's basically escaping a very interesting relationship in Sydney and a bit of a scandal, so she's hiding out. And so the hero is the boy next door who's a builder, and he's renovating the house next door. He flips houses and does them up and sells them. So that's quite a fun story, and she's a real city girl, so going out fishing and all this kind of stuff is very different for her. So that's just a really fun beach read, short summer story. And she really wants to go back to Sydney, but then she meets Pete, and it's that real sort of challenge that often happens in new beginning stories of, do I stay, do I go, and all that kind of stuff.
Mandi, have you read Then There Was You by Kara Isaac?
I haven't.
No. Okay. Valerie, have you read it?
I have read it. It was
Okay.
a while ago, though, so I don't know that I've got deep insights to add. I do remember enjoying it, though.
All right, y'all have to read it. I read that book at least 3 times a year. Like,
Really?
legit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to read it now.
That book
Anything.
at least 3
3
times a year. It's a fantastic story. I usually read it in January, honestly, because it's like a great start off the year kind of book. It's just got so much fun stuff because you've got travel, right? If you haven't been to Sydney, it is a great way to try to imagine going to Sydney. Although I have heard from anonymous, unnamed sources that maybe some of the Sydney things are not where they're supposed to be, but creative license, that's okay. It's a thing. It's a thing.
I'm all for that.
And I mean, I haven't been to Sydney, so I can't tell you whether or not that's true. But there's so much good stuff, and it's such like the epitome of a new beginning because she's starting over not just with a new relationship, but it's a new job, whole new country. And then more so for her, there's the spiritual thread is also new beginnings for her as well. So it sort of covers new beginnings all the way across the board. But like legit, I read that book 3 or more times a year.
Yeah.
If I need when you get in that mood and you're like, you just want something that is going to have this amazing ending and feel good all the way through, I go for that. Usually that's one of my top 5 picks for that.
Well, you sold me for sure.
Well, Kara Isaac,
I'll be expecting, something.
Well, Kara Isaac's an auto buy for me. Any book Kara puts out, I just buy it. I don't even read the blurb.
Yep.
And I think that final big moment climax scene in Then There Was You, in terms of CCR, is probably one of the best out there. It's definitely one of my top rating. If you want a really good finale scene, it's just brilliant.
Yeah. But we're not talking about grand gestures today.
I know.
Wait for it. Mandy, what about you? What are you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's going to be a hard one to talk about because you don't want to give everything away when you talk about how great the ending is. This book and this book had a great ending. Go.
All right, Mandy, what about you? What are your new beginning novels that you've got to talk about today?
I love new beginnings, and probably because I like to travel. So going someplace new is always just a plus for me. There have been times in my life when I just think, oh no, I would never just pack up my life and go somewhere else. But then there were other times in my life when I would say, oh, that would be wonderful. Let's just do that. So I get it that some people maybe don't always relate to a character who does something spontaneous or, just immediate like that. But the first book that I wrote did, that happened, and I didn't even think twice about it. I thought, oh, this is what she was meant to do, is she was meant to move. So the first book that I wanted to talk about is my first book, Just As I Am, and it starts off very quickly. She is leaving Louisiana, she's going into Georgia, she starts a complete new life, and she does have a lot of challenges to face, like, getting a job and, coming into a new community, meeting new people, and she's realizing that everyone knows everyone but her. So she's the one that everyone is a little skeptical of. They're also looking at her like, what are you doing here? And so there's a lot of that as well. I just think it's so much fun to write a new beginning in that way. But
Does
I
she
also
go to
wanted
a
to mention,
small town? Is that where she ends up? Is
Yes.
a small town? Okay, yeah,
small
yeah.
town.
That's
I
definitely
love
you
small towns.
stick out more when you're new to a small town. That is for sure.
Yes. And then I also wanted to talk about the Heroes of Freedom Ridge series. The whole series, it's 6 books. They're complete now. Mine is the first one in the series, but I was thinking about it, and I was like, every single book in this series has someone coming into the fictional town of Freedom, Colorado, and they're all, decide to stay for one reason or another. So each of the 6 books have a different new beginning in that town that we created. It was so much fun to write. 3 of the authors are Inspy romance authors, and they were so wonderful to work with. And all of these books have a spirit, a wonderful spiritual message as well. That every time I've read the next one and the next one, I just think, oh, I'm so glad to be back in this town that we created, and it's been so much fun to write them and read them.
That series.
telling me,
Go ahead.
Beth keeps telling me that I need to read them, and I haven't picked them up yet, but maybe in January I might. You know, the case of the blowing up Kindle, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Real.
We talked about those books briefly in the Christmas episode right before we broke, when we talked about Christmas romance, because those were some of my favorites so far, and now they're all out, so you don't have to even wait. You have no excuse. They do all have new beginnings. It's fun because it's like a little tourist town, and you don't necessarily think about like vacation romance necessarily, but those are definitely new beginnings because people are there to sightsee or whatever, not necessarily there permanently, or so they think. Cool. All right, Valerie, what about you?
Well, the first one that came to my mind was one from Inspi Romance author Valerie Bodden. I really enjoy her stories, and I think it's kind of hilarious that I know of at least 3 series currently in the midst of by Christian authors that have the word hope in the title, and I think that really speaks or to the series, or the town has it, so it's part of the series name. And her series, I didn't write down what it is called. So there you go. But
is it The Hope Springs?
I don't know if that's the series title or not.
Okay.
This particular book is Not Until This Day.
I think it's Hope Springs is the series.
Series name?
That sounds right to me.
Yeah, this one came out in April. So she's putting out 2 or 3 in this series a year. And Isabel is the main character, and she's got a little girl. She's been on the run for 3 years from her ex, and is terrified that he's going to catch up with her. So of course, you know, that's got to happen at some point, right? So she Googled where to find hope. And although it could have led her to Hope Ranch in New Mexico, or Hope Falls New Hope Falls in Washington, where Kimberly Ray Jordan writes, it led her to Hope Springs, Michigan. So she had phoned ahead and she'd booked an apartment, but when she gets there, the owner of the building says, not with that dog, you're not. My granddaughter's allergic to dogs. Didn't you see that you can't have a dog here? And she's like, what do I do, right? She's got this small child and this dog, and this dog has saved her life, so she's not just going to give the dog up, right? So then she goes, well, she's going to have to find a women's shelter somewhere while she regroups. And she Googles that, and that's the nearest one is like 3 hours away. So they spend the night in the car, which I don't think is the first time that's happened, but it's first time in the story. And then when she wakes up in the morning, her daughter and the dog are not in the car, and there's somebody tapping on her window.
No.
And it is the hero. So it's all good, right? You don't need to worry about it. Tyler is half owner of an orchard, and he's a single father, conveniently. And he's taken his sons fishing bright and early, and they're down at the marina, and he sees a car with a woman slumped over the steering wheel. And then this child goes, oh, that's my mom. And he's like, she been drinking? She high on something? Like, this just didn't look right to him, right? So he's over there knocking on the car window, and this is how they meet. Now, he's really suspicious of her, which I guess you can kind of see, right? So she's like, okay, well, I'm leaving town anyway, whatever. But then as they're driving out of town, they see that there's an orchard of cherry trees in full bloom, and her daughter just begs to stop and see the candy lollipop trees. So they do, and they pull into this little farm stand, and the lady is looking for somebody to help and gives her the job on the spot kind of thing. And then it turns out that that woman is Tyler's sister-in-law, and so, but he's still suspicious of her for a really long time. So her new beginning is kind of forced on her, but within the confines of that particular story, she is still making a choice that this is where she's going to move to, and then this is a job that she can do. She can have her daughter with her, and it's all gonna work out. So that one is really fun. I really enjoy the whole series. I love Valerie's writing, so that is one kind of fun thing. Now I'm going to pick on Elizabeth Maddrey, who's also one of my favorite authors, and you all may know of her. You may have heard of her
later.
Too. The one that I thought fit this bill really well was Hope for Freedom, which just came out in October. And Indigo Hewitt is a alpaca farmer, and she comes to her grandparents' ranch when everything else in her life is just exploded and she has no place to go and to take her animals with her. So she comes there to kind of for a new beginning, a fresh start, which doesn't turn out exactly the way she had planned. You know, I don't think it would make a really good story.
Not so much.
It didn't turn out just how they'd planned. Do you think?
No.
But she's been working long distance with one of the ranch hands, and you're going to have to tell me how to pronounce that again, Elizabeth, because I always get it wrong.
Joaquin.
Joaquin, which I would go, not Joaquin.
Joaquin. Yeah, it's a Spanish name, I believe. Yeah. There's an American actor, Joaquin Phoenix, which would help you if you are into actors, but you're not. So, but like when you're my age, you know River and Joaquin Phoenix because they were like your heartthrobs for the longest time, possibly still now. Well, you know, River's dead, sadly, but Joaquin is still quite hot.
That's
so,
it.
Yeah, but Joaquin.
Whereas I would think that's Joaquin if I looked at it.
Yes, it does. It looks like Joaquin, but it is Joaquin.
All right. So now we've got that straightened out. So she's not a believer when she arrives at the ranch, and she decides that he's a pretty good looking guy, and she manages to get him into bed. And then there's another new beginning. And basically, I guess a kind of a marriage of convenience at that point as they look at...
Well, they don't get married right away.
Yeah, but it is...
It's more fake. Well, yeah, sort of. I don't call it marriage of convenience because they don't get married right away.
All right, fine. Okay. It's a good story and you should read it. It's really hard to discuss the author's book if she's right here. And she's
right, when she's going to jump in and tell you you're wrong.
But it's definitely a great new beginning story and somebody who's made a choice to move somewhere because of a situation that's not that great, which again, if you have a great situation, you wouldn't move, right?
Probably not.
So, that's the fun thing about writing fiction and reading fiction is that there's always like something that happens and you go, it rocks the person out of their happy-go-lucky world, or maybe not so happy-go-lucky, but it makes them like choose something that they may not have wanted to choose prior. Just because if everything's just the same as it was before, then where's the story, right?
Yeah.
That's my thought anyway. New beginnings are important.
They are. Absolutely. So it's funny, you guys all worked so hard to come up with Inspi Romance authors. So yay for you, big gold stars. I did not do that. So my two, I picked A Love So Real by Kimberly Ray Jordan. So that is the first in the New Hope Falls series. And
she was on my list, and then I thought Elizabeth's going to talk about that. So
I did, because I love the series. Yeah. So the heroine ends up in New Hope Falls. She's just sort of randomly driving, and she sees the sign and just she's like, that's it. That's where I want to go. She's escaping a sort of scandal in LA. She is a Instagram influencer with a large following, and there was a scandal and paparazzi, and so she sort of like took off to figure her life out, and she ends up in New Hope Falls and realizes that she wants this new beginning now that she sees what it could be. And I like new beginning books like that where the character has to sort of realize that the external new beginning is important for their internal selves as well. And so they, you know, they have that epiphany of, it's not just a physical relocation that needs to happen. I need a new beginning in my heart or in my mindset or in the way that I operate, so that it translates all the way through everything that they're doing. I feel like those are the books that stick with me more, when it's not just like I moved and now everything's perfect, but you know, like I had to change, and that's harder, I feel like. And then the other one that I chose for this was The Secrets of Paper and Ink by Lindsay Harrel. And Valerie would probably argue with me about whether or not I can talk about this one, because it is a split time novel. There is a historical thread and a modern day thread. So it's not solely contemporary, but it's fun because the heroine moves to an apartment over a bookstore in England to help run it. And she sees this, it's, there was actually an ad, I think, that I've seen a number of authors say they want to write a book about it, but Lindsay actually did. There was a bookstore in England that did this. Basically, you could like rent the apartment above for like a month for your vacation and help run the bookstore underneath. So it's like a working vacation. And so that's sort of what kicks off. This woman is having issues at home, so she decides she's going to go to England and help run this bookstore, sort of to get away from it all and start new, and then ends up making friends with the owner of the bookstore and helping to unravel this sort of mystery that involves this past, the historical timeline. So that's kind of fun. I don't read a lot of historical, but I am more likely to read something historical if it's part of a split time book where I also still have contemporary, because I don't want to go live in Regency England, because I feel like indoor plumbing is the world's best thing ever. But I don't mind reading a little bit about Regency England if I also still have people with flushing toilets. So
I'm with you there.
yeah, I like my creature comforts and I'm not ashamed about it. So that
was a fun story. And I think that the contemporary line carried the story. The historical part was interesting, but more to the point for me when I read it was that the hero and the heroine worked together to figure out what had happened in the past, and that was part of what drew them together. So yeah, it was fun.
Cool. All right, so any other thoughts on New Beginnings that anybody feels? Did we miss something? Why you love New Beginnings? Did everybody say why? I don't even think people said. I said why I love New Beginnings. Mandy, why do you love New Beginnings?
I love New Beginnings.
Why?
I think that when I was writing my first series, I really wanted to include the theme of finding home. And I think that sometimes that requires a move from where you think your home is. So a lot of my books, and I love books that I read where a person comes into a new place and that feels more like home than anywhere they've ever been before. And it usually makes a difference about the people you're around and how they welcome you and how you can fit into this new area or society that you're coming into and how well you can adapt. Sometimes it's a lot to take in. I mean, if you're thinking about, oh, where's my new job going to be? Where am I going to live? Like, I'm currently writing a book where she's, just out of nowhere, just picks up and leaves. And then the next day she's like, where am I going to live? Where am I going to get a job? And I called my aunt yesterday to talk to her about she's a police officer. So I wanted to talk about some of the procedures and how things go. And she was like, this is a complicated story. And I was like, yeah, thanks for reminding me. But I mean, if you think about all of the little pieces that have to come together and what it's like to build a new home and to be accepted into a home, I think it makes for a great story when you, friendship and family and finding a new place that's yours.
Community, I think there too. the story that I'm writing right now has that same thing too. She's born and raised in this neighborhood. She's related to half of them. And he comes in and she's like, oh, well, everybody knows everything in this town, in this community, you know, like, sorry about that, but that's just how it is. You know, my grandmother lives there and my aunt and uncle live there, and you can't go anywhere without somebody possibly looking out the window at you who knows who you are, that you're new here. And that adds a lot of fun as well. And the other thing too is, you say, like, where do I live? Where do I get a job? But also, where do I go to church? How do I plug in there? And how do I find, you know, a spiritual home? Providing that character is a believer as they walk into the story, which of course they aren't all.
So this has been super fun. We're hitting right on our time, so we're gonna wrap things up. Thank you for hanging out with us, Mandi, and joining in our conversation. Tell us where we can find you and your books online.
All of my books are available on Amazon in ebook and paperbacks. Some of them are also available in audiobook forms at almost every audiobook retailer. And I have a Facebook page, Mandi Blake, and you know, I'm on Instagram. Those are pictures of my daughter and cool things like that. So more personal side on Instagram. Facebook is, you know, I like to interact on Facebook a lot. But you can buy my books all on Amazon, and they're in Kindle Unlimited.
Do you have a website?
Yes, mandyblakeauthor.com.
There you go. All right. And that would be where they could sign up for your newsletter?
Yes, I do have a newsletter that I love, and I send out updates about once a week. And you can sign up for my newsletter and just hear from me every week.
Excellent. All right. Thank you guys all for joining us at Story Chats. Next week, we're actually going to continue the theme of new beginnings because we can't get enough. We're gonna twist it slightly with how we're approaching it, so you'll want to come back and see what we do, and we hope that you will join us again. If you're watching on YouTube, please don't forget to hit subscribe, and then if you don't want to miss an episode, also hit the notification bell. It's 2 steps, but subscribe and then the notification bell. Please. We're 40 subscribers away from being able to have a really normal channel name, so that would be really helpful. And then you can find us on the web at storychats.podbean.com or inspiromance.com/storychats, and we look forward to seeing you next week. In the meantime, don't forget to fall in love with a good book. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.